Hi, this is my fifth in a six-part video series on the Swiss Soldier knife, and we're looking at the model 1961. This is the longest running model for the Swiss Soldier knife, and it only had two producers or manufacturers, Victorinox and Wenger. It was a big departure from the model 1951, which ran up until that time. It was the same length, 93 millimeters, but much lighter, weighed 72 grams versus 90 grams for the 1951 model. And as you can see, the biggest difference were these aluminum anodized scales, these knurled aluminum A-lock scales. That made the knife thinner, lighter. The tool set was completely redesigned. Some of the tools were repositioned. The can opener and the screwdriver were reversed. And just to show you some of the differences in the tools, you know, this is a new style awl with a ridge. It's much more angular and has a ridge, and it fits down in the tools as opposed to, you know, having to carve out part of the handle to position it and get to it. The can opener was a complete redesign. Now has a small screwdriver at the end. This is a Wenger model here. Let's see, 1964, Wenger 1964, and the can openers were a Victorinox patent. So sometimes on the can openers you'll see a Swiss cross and the letters PAT. That stands for patent or patented for the Victorinox screwdriver. I'm sorry, can opener. The screwdriver keeps the wire stripper, but also now has a cap lifter. And those are the major differences in the tools. You retain the hollow rivet. And at the beginning of the video I put up a picture showing a soldier using the hollow rivet and his knife as a plumb bob to sight in the rocket, or grenade launcher rather, on his rifle. So that was, I talked about that in an earlier video. I said there were graduations alongside one of the legs of the tripods. I don't think that's correct now looking at that picture. It looks like maybe it's just a bipod or maybe just some type of scale that flips out from the rifle that helps with that sighting. But that's way cool. That's what they used that for, and that's why it's on the knife. You can see the red scales. They ran from 1962 up through 64. And then they switched to just the plain silver scales because the red anodization would wear off and leave the knives looking really poor. I think the story is that they started with red so the knives would be easy to find. You know, if you dropped it in the snow or something, you could find it. But it didn't hold up very well, so they dropped that. So there's not a whole lot of change between this variation and this variation, but these are the first two major variations. This is a 1961 model, but I've read a couple different things. I've read that they started producing and delivering them in 62. I know that's true with Victorinox, but I've also heard that Wenger made some in 61. I'm not sure about that, and I've never seen one, so if you have any information on that and you want to leave a comment or clarify that, that would help me a lot. The next big change in this series was in 1965. And no, I'm sorry, the silver, yeah, well, it was in 1965 when they went to the silver ones, and those ran until 1976. You had a small change in the Waffen control symbol in 72 where it was turned horizontally. It used to be, well, they kept the same Waffen control symbol as they had on the 1951 models. It's actually the same since 1915, so it appears on the 1908 models as well. It just looks a little different because it's a circle with a Swiss cross inside of it and a WK in there. And it just looks a little different between these two knives because on the A-LOX handles the blank is also a Swiss cross, and that's where they put that little circle. But you'll notice that on the very first versions, those were positioned vertically, like this. And then after 1972, on these models, that WK is positioned in there horizontally. So that's another variation that some people count. That might be the third variation. This might be the third variation if you want to count it that way. And then the next big change was in 1977. And that's when they put the Swiss coat of arms here in place of the Waffen Control stamp. The Waffen Control stamp was moved to this end of the knife. They made a little blank spot in the aluminum scales and put a new design, a new Waffen Control design in there. It's a W with a K in it. And retain the hollow rivet. I think most of the tools pretty much stayed the same. So in 1977 you've got this version, and it went up until like 1988, and then in 1988 the Waffen Control symbol was dropped. Now I don't have that one. It would fit right in here. I don't have that example. It would look just like this knife with a hollow rivet with either a blank space in the ALOX scale for the Waffen Control symbol, but no Waffen Control symbol, or nothing at all. So that's another variation you could have. You could have a blank spot here and no Waffen Control. Those are usually for civilian use. Usually you want to see a stamp there, at least up until when the Waffen Control was dropped completely. And then in 1993, some other changes. The Swiss had a new rifle, Model 90, and they no longer needed the hollow rivet to do that old style, sighting in, using the knife as a plumb bob, so that was dropped. Some of the tools were changed. Your screwdriver no longer has a sharpened edge for stripping wire. It does have a notch for bending wire. I hear a lot of people, read about a lot of people referring to that as a wire stripper. I don't know how you strip wire with that. It's not sharp. I don't see how in the world it would work. So I think it's really more like for bending wire. And there really is no sharpened edge in here anymore for stripping wire. Also, the tools were made a little thinner. The screwdriver is a little thinner than it was before. I guess that's pretty much the main differences there. And then in 2004 would be the last change, and I don't have this example either, but it looks just like this, except for the Swiss coat of arms goes to a darker, deeper red. So that's something to look for. So all in all, you could have up to 7 maybe varieties of this 1961 to collect, and all the years if you wanted to try to get different years each and every year. The blade stamps were also changed. This one being an older one, it started off Wenger Delamont, and it later changed to, it escapes me, but a 3 or 4 line Wenger Delamont Switzerland stainless or something like that. This is a Victorinox, and it was originally, they started off Elsener Suisse Victoria. They later changed that to Victorinox, Switzerland stainless, rust free. Let's see if we've got, that's a Wenger. Well, let's see what they changed it to here. Wenger Delamont Switzerland stainless. That was a blade shank stamping change, and then the more modern Victorinox is Victorinox Switzerland stainless. And I think that's it, unless it says rust free under there. Yep, rust free. So anyway, it gets it gets pretty detailed. Understand all that, and that's what collecting's all about. That's what makes it fun. One thing I wanted to mention is I see a lot of these Wengers with a bail, and people are selling them as soldier's knives. And you go to eBay and everything, people are paying up for them. And that's okay if you just want a civilian version of the soldier knife, if you're getting one because of its condition or something. But soldier's knives never had a bail. So what you're looking at there, anytime you see one with a bail through it, that's Wenger's standard issue. It never had any kind of military connection. I just thought I would point that out. Okay, I think that's it. I do want to say that, there is overlap. I gave these dates, and, the manufacturers would use up old parts, so there'd be some overlap. Like this knife, they officially allowed Wenger and Victorinox to drop the red, after a few years, so they were supposed to be able to drop it after 64. But you can see these knives stamped 65, 66, 67 still have red scales as they used up their old inventory. And so you get a lot of overlap, and it's not quite cut and dry as it might seem. But that's pretty much the breakdown there. You got your 61 to 64, 65 to 76, 77 on out to 88, and then in 93 you got the solid rivet, and in 2004 you got the deeper colored red Swiss Cross. So anyway, that's a rundown on those knives. I hope that was helpful for you if you're just learning about this, and if you've got some things to add to the mix, please go ahead and leave some comments, and I'd appreciate it. Have fun collecting.